The Saturday afternoon heat shimmered off the asphalt of Maple Street as 9-year-old Olivia Chen carefully counted the coins in her small pink purse. It was July 18, 2015, and the summer vacation days stretched endlessly ahead like a promise of infinite adventures. She had been saving her allowance for 3 weeks, accumulating enough quarters and dimes to finally afford the special edition Pokémon cards that Martinez Corner Store had been advertising in their window display. Olivia's mother, Linda Chen, was in the middle of folding laundry when her daughter appeared in the living room doorway, already wearing her helmet and clutching the handlebars of her bright yellow bicycle. The bike had been Olivia's pride and joy since receiving it for her 9th birthday 2 months earlier, decorated with colorful streamers flowing from the handlebars and a small bell that she loved to ring whenever she spotted neighborhood cats. "Mom, can I ride to Martinez's to get those Pokémon cards?" Olivia asked, her dark eyes bright with anticipation. She had been talking about those cards for weeks, studying the pictures on the store's flyer and explaining to anyone who would listen why these particular cards were essential to her collection. Her enthusiasm for Pokémon had become something of a family joke, with her father David often teasing that she knew more about fictional creatures than real animals. Linda looked up from the pile of towels she was folding, considering the request. Martinez Corner Store was only 4 blocks away, an easy bike ride through their quiet residential neighborhood in Riverside, California. The route was familiar to Olivia, straight down Maple Street, right on Oak Avenue, then left on Commerce Street to the small strip mall where the store was located. It was a trip they had made together countless times, and at 9 years old, Olivia was responsible enough to handle the short journey alone. "Stay on the sidewalk, don't talk to strangers, and be back in 30 minutes. Linda instructed, the same safety reminders she gave every time Olivia ventured out on her own. The neighborhood felt safe, tree-lined streets with well-maintained houses, where children played in front yards and neighbors knew each other by name. Crime was rare in their middle-class suburb, limited mostly to occasional bicycle thefts and the odd package disappearing from a front porch. Olivia nodded eagerly, already mentally cataloging which cards she hoped to find. She kissed her mother goodbye, promised to be careful, and wheeled her bike through the front door. Linda watched from the window as her daughter adjusted her helmet, mounted the yellow bicycle, and pedaled down their driveway with the determined focus of someone on an important mission. The time was exactly 2:15 p.m. when Olivia left home, a detail that would later become crucial to investigators. Linda noted it specifically because she wanted to ensure her daughter returned before David got home from his weekend shift at the hospital. David worked as a radiology technician and often worried about Olivia's growing independence, preferring that she wait for parental escort on her neighborhood expeditions. Mrs. Eleanor Vasquez, who lived 3 houses down from the Chen family, was watering her front garden when she saw Olivia pedal past. The elderly woman waved, and Olivia rang her bike bell in response, a cheerful sound that Mrs. Vasquez would later remember with heartbreaking clarity. According to Mrs. Vasquez's later testimony, Olivia appeared happy and unhurried, stopping briefly to pet the Hendersons, golden retriever who had wandered to the edge of their yard. At the corner of Maple Street and Oak Avenue, Olivia encountered Tommy Rodriguez, a classmate from her 4th grade class at Riverside Elementary. Tommy was walking home from his friend's house and later told investigators that he and Olivia had talked briefly about their summer vacation plans. Olivia had mentioned her errand to buy Pokémon cards and had seemed excited about starting a new collection book she had received from her grandmother. Tommy's account provided investigators with the last confirmed sighting of Olivia. According to his statement, she had continued north on Oak Avenue, following her usual route toward Commerce Street. Tommy watched her pedal away, noting that she was riding carefully on the sidewalk just as her parents had taught her. Nothing about the encounter seemed unusual or concerning. The route from the corner of Maple and Oak to Martinez Corner Store should have taken Olivia no more than 5 minutes by bicycle. The pathway was straightforward, with clear sidewalks and minimal traffic even on weekend afternoons. Oak Avenue was a quiet residential street lined with mature trees that provided plenty of shade, making it a pleasant ride even on hot summer days. However, Olivia never arrived at Martinez Corner Store. Carlos Martinez, the store's owner, knew Olivia well from her frequent visits with her parents. When investigators later asked about that Saturday afternoon, he was certain that she had not entered his store. The special Pokémon cards she had been saving to purchase remained in their display case, untouched and waiting for a customer who would never arrive. At 2:45 p.m., exactly 30 minutes after Olivia had left home, Linda Chen began watching for her daughter's return. The yellow bicycle with its streaming handlebars should have been easily visible coming down Maple Street. When 3 o'clock passed with no sign of Olivia, Linda felt the first stirrings of concern. Her daughter was usually punctual, especially when given specific time limits for her adventures. By 3:15, Linda's concern had escalated to worry. She called Martinez Corner Store, thinking perhaps Olivia had lingered to examine merchandise or had encountered friends who delayed her return. Carlos Martinez's answer sent a chill through Linda's chest. Olivia had never arrived at the store. He had been working the register all afternoon and was certain he would have noticed her distinctive yellow bicycle and enthusiastic personality. Linda immediately called David at the hospital, her voice tight with anxiety as she explained the situation. David, despite being in the middle of his shift, told his supervisor about the emergency and left work immediately. The 20-minute drive from Riverside General Hospital to their home felt like an eternity, as he tried to convince himself that there was surely a simple explanation for Olivia's absence. While waiting for David to arrive, Linda decided to retrace Olivia's route. She grabbed her car keys and drove slowly down Maple Street, then along Oak Avenue toward Commerce Street, scanning both sides of the road for any sign of her daughter or the yellow bicycle. She checked the small park on Oak Avenue where children sometimes stopped to play, examined the bus stops where Olivia might have encountered friends, and even drove through the parking lot of the strip mall where Martinez Corner Store was located. The search revealed nothing. No abandoned bicycle, no small figure in the familiar purple t-shirt and denim shorts that Olivia had been wearing, no trace of the bright pink backpack she had carried to hold her anticipated Pokémon cards. It was as if Olivia had simply vanished somewhere between the corner where Tommy Rodriguez had seen her and the store where she never arrived. David arrived home at 3:50 p.m. to find Linda in a state of barely controlled panic. Together, they drove the route again, this time stopping to speak with anyone they encountered along the way. A jogger remembered seeing a yellow bicycle earlier, but couldn't recall specific details about the rider. A woman walking her dog thought she might have seen a child in purple, but wasn't certain of the time or location. At 4:30 p.m., 45 minutes passed when Olivia should have returned home, David and Linda Chen called the Riverside Police Department. The dispatcher who took their call was initially reassuring. Children often lost track of time, especially during summer vacation. But when Linda explained that Olivia had never reached her intended destination and that her route had been thoroughly searched, the tone of the conversation shifted to one of urgency. Officer Rebecca Santos was the first responder to arrive at the Chen home at 4:50 p.m. A 10-year veteran of the Riverside Police Department, Santos had handled numerous missing child cases. Most resolved quickly with children found at friends, houses, local parks, or simply having taken longer than expected to complete their errands. But as she listened to Linda and David's account of the afternoon, something about this case felt different. Santos immediately called for backup and requested the K-9 unit. The bloodhounds arrived within 20 minutes, and their handlers began working from the Chen family's front yard. The dogs easily picked up Olivia's scent trail, following it down Maple Street to the corner where Tommy Rodriguez had encountered her. From there, the trail continued north on Oak Avenue for approximately 1 block before ending abruptly near the intersection with Pine Street. The sudden termination of the scent trail was troubling. Officer Maria Gonzalez, one of the K-9 handlers, had seen this pattern before in cases where children had been picked up by vehicles. The dogs circled the area repeatedly, whining and pawing at the spot where the scent disappeared. There was no indication that Olivia had continued on foot, no trace of her having doubled back toward home, and no evidence that she had entered any of the nearby houses. Detective James Morrison, a specialist in missing persons cases, took over the investigation at 6 p.m. Morrison had worked with the Riverside Police Department for 15 years and had handled dozens of missing child cases throughout his career. His approach combined systematic investigation techniques with an understanding of child psychology and family dynamics. Morrison's first step was to conduct detailed interviews with every member of the Chen family and anyone who had contact with Olivia that day. David and Linda provided a comprehensive picture of their daughter, a bright, responsible child who followed rules and rarely caused concern. Olivia was described as friendly but not naive, having been taught about stranger danger and the importance of staying within familiar neighborhoods. The interviews revealed no family problems, no recent changes in Olivia's behavior, and no indication that she had been planning anything other than her simple trip to buy Pokémon cards. Her summer had been typical for a 9-year-old playing with friends, reading books, and anticipating the start of 4th grade. There were no reports of unusual phone calls to the family, no strangers asking about children in the neighborhood, and no recent incidents that might have suggested Olivia was being targeted. Tommy Rodriguez's account of his conversation with Olivia became crucial to establishing a timeline. According to Tommy, they had talked for approximately 3 minutes at the corner of Maple and Oak. Olivia had seemed normal and happy, excited about her planned purchase, and looking forward to organizing her Pokémon card collection. She had mentioned no concerns, no unusual encounters, and no changes to her intended route. The search for Olivia expanded throughout the evening of July 18th. Additional police units canvassed the neighborhood, speaking with residents and searching yards, garages, and any structures where a child might hide or be hidden. Volunteers from the community began arriving as word of the disappearance spread, organizing systematic searches of local parks, vacant lots, and commercial areas. Detective Morrison also initiated an investigation into potential abduction scenarios. The sudden end of the scent trail suggested that Olivia had been picked up by a vehicle at or near the intersection of Oak Avenue and Pine Street. This location was significant because it was the most secluded point along her intended route, bordered by an empty lot on one side and a high fence surrounding a small industrial building on the other. The area where the scent trail ended was examined by forensic specialists who found tire tracks that appeared fresh but were too degraded by foot traffic from the search to provide useful evidence. However, the positioning of the tracks suggested that a vehicle had stopped abruptly at the curb, consistent with someone either offering assistance to a child or forcing a child into a vehicle. As night fell on July 18th, the search for Olivia continued under artificial lighting. The yellow bicycle that should have been with her became a focal point of the investigation. If Olivia had been abducted, what had happened to the bike? It was too large and distinctive to be easily concealed, yet no trace of it had been found, despite extensive searching. The first 24 hours of the investigation yielded numerous tips from concerned citizens but no concrete leads. Reported sightings of yellow bicycles came in from across Riverside County, each of which was investigated and ultimately ruled out. A gas station attendant thought he had seen a child matching Olivia's description, but security camera footage failed to confirm the sighting. A woman at a shopping mall reported seeing a girl who looked like Olivia with an adult male, but the description of the man was too vague to be useful. Detective Morrison established a command center at the Riverside Police Department, coordinating search efforts and managing the flow of information from the public. The FBI was contacted and agreed to provide assistance if the investigation indicated that Olivia had been transported across state lines. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children was notified, and Olivia's information was entered into national databases. The Chen family struggled to cope with the sudden absence of their daughter. Linda found herself unable to eat or sleep, spending hours staring out windows and jumping at every phone call. David took extended leave from his job at the hospital, dedicating all his time to coordinating with searchers and following up on tips. The house felt empty without Olivia's chatter about Pokémon, her enthusiastic planning of summer activities, and the constant sound of her bike bell ringing in the driveway. On July 20th, 2 days after Olivia's disappearance, the investigation received its first significant break. A maintenance worker at Riverside Community College, approximately 3 miles from the Chen home, discovered a yellow bicycle abandoned in a drainage ditch behind the campus library. The bike matched the description of Olivia's bicycle perfectly, complete with colorful streamers and a small bell. The discovery of the bicycle was both encouraging and terrifying for Olivia's family. It confirmed that something had indeed happened to their daughter, but it also suggested that she was no longer in the immediate area. The location where the bike was found was not on any route that Olivia would have taken voluntarily, indicating that someone else had transported both her and the bicycle to that location. Forensic examination of the bicycle revealed several important clues. The bike showed no signs of damage that would indicate an accident or struggle. However, investigators found fingerprints on the handlebars that did not match Olivia or any member of her family. The prints belonged to an adult male and were entered into criminal databases for comparison. Additionally, a small piece of fabric was found caught on the bicycle's chain guard. The fabric was purple cotton that matched the t-shirt Olivia had been wearing when she disappeared. This evidence suggested that Olivia had been with the bicycle when it was abandoned, though whether she was alive or dead at that time remained unknown. The drainage ditch where the bicycle was discovered became the focus of an intensive search. Cadaver dogs were brought in to examine the area for any indication of human remains. The surrounding campus was searched building by building, with particular attention paid to storage areas, maintenance facilities, and any structures that could conceal evidence. The search of Riverside Community College revealed one additional piece of evidence that would prove crucial to the investigation. Security cameras in the campus parking lot had recorded a white panel van arriving at approximately 11 p.m. on July 18th, 3 hours before the bicycle was discovered. The van had remained in the lot for approximately 20 minutes before departing. Though the license plate was not clearly visible in the footage, investigators could determine that the vehicle was an older model Ford van with distinctive rust patterns on the rear doors. Detective Morrison immediately issued a bulletin to law enforcement agencies throughout Southern California, requesting information about white Ford panel vans matching the description from the security footage. The response was overwhelming. Dozens of similar vehicles were reported and investigated, but none yielded evidence connecting them to Olivia's disappearance. The investigation expanded to include a thorough background check on anyone who had access to the college campus, or who had been in the area on the night the bicycle was discovered. This included college employees, students attending summer sessions, and maintenance workers from various companies that serviced the campus. One name that emerged during this investigation was Michael Stevens, a 38-year-old janitor who worked for a cleaning company that held contracts with several buildings on the Riverside Community College campus. Stevens had been scheduled to work on the night of July 18th, but had called in sick at the last minute. When investigators attempted to interview him about his whereabouts that evening, they discovered that he had left California abruptly, telling his supervisor that a family emergency required him to return to his home state of Nevada. Further investigation into Michael Stevens revealed a troubling criminal history. He had been arrested twice in Nevada for loitering near elementary schools, and had been questioned in connection with the disappearance of another child in Las Vegas 3 years earlier. Though no charges had been filed in that case, the pattern of behavior raised significant concerns among investigators. Stevens owned a white Ford van that matched the general description of the vehicle seen on the college security cameras. When investigators contacted Nevada authorities to locate Stevens for questioning, they learned that he had been involved in a single-car accident on Interstate 15 near Barstow on July 20th, just hours after Olivia's bicycle was discovered. The accident had been fatal. Stevens had apparently fallen asleep at the wheel, causing his van to leave the roadway and roll multiple times before coming to rest in a deep ravine. The vehicle had caught fire, destroying most of the physical evidence that might have linked Stevens to Olivia's disappearance. By the time the wreckage was discovered and Stevens was identified, any forensic evidence had been compromised beyond recovery. The death of Michael Stevens created a frustrating situation for investigators. All evidence pointed to him as the most likely suspect in Olivia's abduction, but his death made it impossible to question him or to search his property for additional evidence. The burned van could not provide the definitive proof that would confirm his involvement in the case. Detective Morrison continued to investigate Stevens' background and activities, hoping to find evidence that would either confirm or eliminate him as a suspect. The investigation revealed that Stevens had been in the Riverside area for approximately 6 months before Olivia's disappearance, working various janitorial jobs and living in a series of cheap motels. He had no known friends or associates in California and had kept to himself during his time in the area. Interviews with Stevens, former colleagues revealed a pattern of concerning behavior. Several co-workers reported that he seemed particularly interested in stories about local families and had asked unusual questions about neighborhood layouts and children's routines. A supervisor at one cleaning company reported that Stevens had been fired after being found in areas of buildings where he had no assigned duties, particularly near daycare centers and after-school programs. Despite the strong circumstantial evidence pointing to Michael Stevens, the investigation into Olivia's disappearance remained officially unsolved. Without Stevens available for questioning, and without physical evidence linking him definitively to the crime, investigators could not close the case. The Chen family was left with the agonizing uncertainty of never knowing for certain what had happened to their daughter. Years passed with no significant developments in the case. The Chen family gradually rebuilt their lives around the permanent absence of Olivia, though the pain of not knowing her fate never diminished. Linda returned to her job as a school librarian, finding comfort in working with children, while simultaneously being reminded daily of the daughter she had lost. David continued his work at the hospital, but became involved in community organizations focused on child safety and missing persons advocacy. The family's home became a sort of shrine to Olivia's memory. Her room was preserved exactly as she had left it that July morning, with Pokémon cards scattered on her desk and her collection books still waiting for the special edition cards she had planned to purchase. The yellow bicycle's empty space in the garage served as a daily reminder of the simple errand that had gone so tragically wrong. Detective Morrison retired from the Riverside Police Department in 2019, but he never stopped thinking about the Olivia Chen case. Even in retirement, he continued to review the file periodically, hoping that new technology or fresh perspectives might reveal clues that had been overlooked during the original investigation. In 2021, Morrison received a call that would reignite interest in the case. A construction crew working on a housing development in Hemet, approximately 30 miles from Riverside, had discovered human remains while excavating for a foundation. The remains were those of a child, and initial examination suggested they had been buried for several years. The discovery sent shockwaves through the law enforcement community and brought renewed hope to the Chen family. DNA analysis confirmed that the remains belonged to Olivia Chen, finally providing the answer to the question that had haunted her family for 6 years. The location where she was found was remote and undeveloped, suggesting that her killer had chosen the burial site specifically to avoid detection. Forensic examination of the remains and the burial site revealed limited additional information about Olivia's death. The condition of the bones made it impossible to determine the exact cause of death, though the positioning suggested that she had been buried shortly after her disappearance. Personal items found with the remains confirmed that this was indeed the girl who had left home on her yellow bicycle to buy Pokémon cards. The discovery of Olivia's remains provided closure for her family, while simultaneously reopening the investigation into her death. Though Michael Stevens remained the primary suspect, investigators could not definitively prove his involvement. The case was officially reclassified as a homicide, but without a living suspect or additional physical evidence, the likelihood of anyone being prosecuted for Olivia's murder remained slim. Detective Morrison, now working as a consultant to law enforcement agencies, was called in to review the case with fresh eyes. He spent months re-examining every piece of evidence, every witness statement, and every lead that had been followed during the original investigation. His goal was to determine whether Stevens had indeed been responsible for Olivia's death, or whether the real killer remained at large. Morrison's review of the case file revealed several pieces of evidence that seemed to point definitively toward Michael Stevens. The timing of his disappearance from California, his access to a vehicle matching the one seen at the college, and his history of concerning behavior around children all supported the theory that he had been responsible for Olivia's abduction and murder. However, Morrison also identified several inconsistencies that troubled him. The location where Olivia's remains were found was more than 50 miles from where Stevens had been living in Riverside. The burial site showed signs of careful planning and local knowledge, suggesting that the killer was familiar with the remote area. Stevens had only been in California for 6 months and had no known connections to the Hemet area. Additionally, the timeline of Stevens' movements on July 18th remained unclear. While he had called in sick to work that evening, there was no definitive proof of his whereabouts during the time when Olivia disappeared. The fatal accident that killed Stevens occurred 2 days after Olivia's disappearance, but investigators had never been able to determine where he had been during the intervening period. As Morrison delved deeper into the investigation, he began to consider the possibility that Stevens might not have been acting alone. The careful disposal of Olivia's body and the strategic placement of her bicycle suggested a level of planning and local knowledge that seemed beyond what Stevens could have managed on his own. This led Morrison to explore whether Stevens might have had an accomplice who remained unidentified. The investigation into potential accomplices revealed several individuals who had worked with Stevens at various cleaning companies throughout his time in California. Most of these individuals had unremarkable backgrounds and solid alibis for July 18th. However, one former coworker, Thomas Wright, had left California around the same time as Stevens and had since disappeared completely. Wright had worked with Stevens at 2 different cleaning companies and had been described by supervisors as equally problematic. Like Stevens, Wright had been fired from one job for being found in unauthorized areas of buildings. Unlike Stevens, Wright was a California native who had grown up in the San Bernardino area and was familiar with remote locations throughout Southern California. The search for Thomas Wright became a priority for investigators, but he proved as elusive as Stevens had been. Wright had no permanent address, no steady employment history, and no close family members who maintained contact with him. He had effectively vanished from any official records after leaving California in July 2015. In 2023, investigators received a break in their search for Wright when his name appeared in connection with another missing child case in Arizona. A girl had disappeared from a Phoenix suburb under circumstances similar to Olivia's case, a short trip from home that ended in abduction. Though that case remained unsolved, witnesses had reported seeing a man matching Wright's description in the area around the time of the disappearance. The Phoenix Police Department shared their case file with Riverside investigators, revealing striking similarities between the 2 disappearances. Both involved young girls who had been abducted while on routine errands in their neighborhoods. Both cases featured vehicles that were abandoned in locations far from where the children had last been seen. Most significantly, Both cases occurred in areas where Wright had been known to have lived or worked. The discovery of potential connections between Wright and multiple missing children cases led to a coordinated investigation involving law enforcement agencies from California, Arizona, and Nevada. The investigation revealed a pattern of movement that suggested Wright had been targeting children in various states while maintaining a transient lifestyle that made him difficult to track. Despite extensive efforts to locate Thomas Wright, he remained at large as of 2024. The FBI added his name to their most wanted list, and his photograph was distributed to law enforcement agencies nationwide. The investigation into his possible involvement in Olivia Chen's death continued, though without additional evidence or Wright's capture, the case remained technically unsolved. For the Chen family, the discovery of Olivia's remains provided a bittersweet form of closure. They finally knew what had happened to their daughter and were able to lay her to rest in a peaceful cemetery near their home. However, the knowledge that her killer had never been brought to justice remained a source of ongoing pain and frustration. Linda Chen became an advocate for missing children, working with organizations like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to help other families navigate the devastating experience of losing a child. She often spoke about the importance of community vigilance and the need for better communication between law enforcement agencies investigating crimes that cross jurisdictional boundaries. David Chen focused his advocacy efforts on improving technology for tracking missing children and supporting research into better investigative techniques. He worked with computer programmers to develop apps that could quickly distribute information about missing children to people in specific geographic areas, hoping to prevent other families from experiencing the loss that had devastated his own. The yellow bicycle that had once carried Olivia on countless neighborhood adventures was eventually donated to a local children's charity, where it was refurbished and given to another child who needed transportation. Linda Chen felt that Olivia would have wanted the bike to continue bringing joy to someone else, rather than sitting unused as a monument to tragedy. Detective Morrison continued to review the case file periodically, hoping that technological advances or new information might eventually lead to Thomas Wright's capture. He remained convinced that Wright held the key to understanding not only what had happened to Olivia Chen, but also to solving other missing children cases throughout the Southwest. The investigation into Olivia's death highlighted the challenges law enforcement faces when dealing with transient criminals who cross state boundaries. It also demonstrated the importance of interagency cooperation and the need for better systems to track individuals with histories of concerning behavior around children. Today, the case of Olivia Chen serves as a reminder of how quickly an ordinary summer day can turn into a family's worst nightmare. Her story continues to be studied by law enforcement professionals and used in training programs for investigators who specialize in missing children cases. The simple errand that was supposed to take 30 minutes and result in nothing more than a new collection of Pokemon cards instead became a mystery that spanned nearly a decade and involved multiple states. Olivia's bright yellow bicycle, once a symbol of childhood independence and summer adventures, became evidence in one of California's most heartbreaking unsolved crimes. The case remains officially open, with investigators continuing to follow leads and hope for the break that will finally bring Olivia's killer to justice. Her family continues to honor her memory through their advocacy work, ensuring that the 9-year-old girl who loved Pokemon cards and bike rides will never be forgotten. The intersection of Oak Avenue and Pine Street, where Olivia's scent trail ended on that July afternoon in 2015, looks much the same today as it did then. But for those who know the story, it serves as a somber reminder of how vulnerable children can be, even in the safest-seeming neighborhoods, and how a simple trip to buy candy can end in unimaginable tragedy.